Bismillah. Bismillah walhamdulillah. Salatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammad al-Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Bismillah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah. We're here in the last 2-3 nights of Ramadan, inshallah. We ask Allah to accept all our deeds, all our prayers, all our fasting, inshallah. Inshallah. Alhamdulillah, we're here, and it's a blessing to be among the believers, to be among worshippers, to be among the lovers for the divine. Because this month, when we want and to finish Ramadan in a way that's, that's impactful for our lives, we go back. Ibn Ata'illah, we covered this in the morning. He says, وَالرُّجُوعُ إِلَى اللَّهِ فِي الْبِدَايَاتِ, or كما قال, that's how he says, that how we start is to return to Allah in the very beginning. Begin with the end in mind. So we think about Ramadan, we think about fasting, we think about whatever that we go through, the motions, quote unquote, right? Emotions. And we ask ourselves, is there a change that has happened to me before Ramadan, in the middle of Ramadan, and inshallah after Ramadan? We have to gauge ourselves, because this Ramadan, this blessing of a month, it encourages us. Allah gives this as a gift, as a blessing for us to really check ourselves. What is the change that is happening? And for this fast reminder, this Ramadan reflection, inshallah, I wanted to talk about purpose and practice. Purpose and practice. When we think about purpose, we think about, how the Prophet ﷺ, Allah be pleased with him, he describes someone who's fasting, and this is a very fundamental question that we ask ourselves. Why do I fast? That's a question that we all have to ask ourselves. Why do I fast? Do I fast because the societal pressures of Ramadan, and then I just follow through with people that are telling me to do what I need to do? Or is it something that is beyond that societal thing? Because it's really beautiful, when we think about Ramadan, there's the public and the private. The public, we see people, we break our fast together, we pray together, we make dua together. Just now, we had the Khatam of Quran, which is really interesting, a tangent. How in Indonesia, or in the Islamic boarding schools and Islamic institutions, in ASHAR, where I studied as well, they employ the usage of poetry, of rhythm, of sing-song. Right? Allahumma arhamna bil-Quran. That was one of the methods in teaching the people and teaching the communities. It's like nursery rhymes. When you think of a nursery rhyme, it's easy to remember because there's a rhythm, there's a scale. The same idea goes with our scholars in the way of their teaching of many different advices and whatnot. Right? You have many of these poets, these poetries that are taught for us, so we can gain perspective, and it eases us in as a community when we do communal things together. That's the community aspect. We're in this together. That's the Jum'at, right? There's the power in the Jum'at. There's power in being with like-minded people when we're doing this together. But there's also the private. Why am I doing this? That's a fundamental question you have to ask. Why am I fasting? Because the Prophet ﷺ, he describes, there are people that at the end of Ramadan, what they gained out of Ramadan was only thirst and hunger. They gained nothing else. Right? So what are we gaining out of Ramadan? What are we getting out of this fasting? Is it just the hunger? Is it just the suffering? Is it just the pain? What is there more to it in Ramadan? That's the beginning with the end in mind. What are we trying to get out of this Ramadan? What are we trying to get out of this fasting? One of the things, and this is the top of the list, other than the empathy that we feel for others, the struggles that we go through, and so forth, is to have Allah in mind. To have that lens of that, this dunya, this world that I have, right here in front of me, that I experience, that I feel, that I go through the day-to-day, my 9 to 5, I go in and out, I go to school, I have a career. All of this will amount to nothing at the end, if you think about it. Why? We all know the reality of this life, and that it's temporary. You know, it's temporary. It's not long lasting. That's the mindset that, that Ramadan is teaching us. This hunger that we feel, the struggle that we feel, is temporary. Because we've been, for those that feel that hunger, we get to that hunger point, but then once we break our fast, it's as though that hunger was never there. Right? We eat, we break, it was as though I'm full again. Right? That's how the dunya is. That's how the world is. And that's how really temporary the changes of life are. And that's how life is. Right? Fasting is meant for us to be more vigilant of ourselves, to be more mindful of who can allow that to happen. It's to have that God-mindedness, that God-mindfulness, that God-consciousness. In the Arabic, it's called taqwa. Taqwa. To be mindful of Allah. Now, we can be mindful of Allah in the night prayers, in the Taraweh. We're focusing our time and energy, sweat, blood, and tears. We also ask the question, why am I praying in the first place? Why am I fasting in the first place? Why am I praying in the first place? Is it also a societal pressure, or is it something else? When the Prophet was asked, why are you praying these nights? To the point where your legs are swelling. Because many of us, our legs are BUKA. We're sweating. We're doing 8 rak'ahs, alhamdulillah. If you want to go to any other place, 20 rak'ahs, go ahead, be my guest. But alhamdulillah, we're doing 8. And many of us still feel that sense of, numbness, tiredness. When the Prophet was asked by our mother Aisha, why are you still praying? Why are you still up at night? The answer was, أَوَلَا أَكُونُ عَبْدًا شَكُورًا. It wasn't because I have to do this. It wasn't because I got to check the list. The Prophet answered, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, can I not be a thankful servant? This month is a month of appreciation. To be thankful, one has to also show love. This month is also a month of love. Right? When we show our love to Allah, it's the idea that when we're thankful, when someone gives an outstanding speech or like a lecture, there's a standing ovation. Right? Everyone stands up and applauds. Every time we have a devotion towards God, that's the same idea that we have. We have a standing ovation to Allah. We thank Allah in what He has given us, in the faculties that we have, in what we are able to enjoy in this life. That's the thankfulness that we have in this month. Right? And it needs a sense of love. Now there's the love for the Prophet ﷺ, there's love for Allah, and there's the love of the Prophet for the people. Now I want to end it with this right here. The love of the Prophet for the people. Now what do we think about the love of the Prophet for the people? How is the Prophet towards the people? Towards the community? When we think about community, this is a big issue. Because the Sahaba at the time, when the migration happened, the Hijrah happened, there were the immigrants. and they were the guests, or the people who had the place to stay. Let's think about immigration in the US. Many of our families, they immigrated over, and then you have people over here, hopefully welcoming. Right? That's the hope that we have, a welcoming community. When we think about welcoming, we think that we should also welcome the guest of Ramadan, because Ramadan is also a guest. How do we treat that guest? How do we treat those that we don't know? Right? أفشوا السلام أطعموا الطعام وأقيموا الصلاة والناس نيام تدخل الجنة أو كما قال. There are 4 advices that the Prophet ﷺ gave to the community, because the Ansar, the helpers, the ones that were at Medina, they were the ones that were welcoming the immigrants, the Muhajirun. They had differences, right? They had differences. You know, us as a people, there's bound to be differences. You know, لِتَعَارَفُوا, and these differences we're told, we're instructed by Allah in His words to get to know one another, because there are going to be differences. You have people from the archipelago, from Jawa, from Sunda, from that are not from the archipelago as well. You know, you have people from Bangladesh, maybe Mexico, maybe from the US as well, maybe from Singapore, maybe from wherever. What was the mesh? How does the other feel? Right? Because we can say something maybe with good intention, but how did that person feel about that? Right? And that's a big issue. When we want to pray to Allah and so on and so forth, but then our bonds with our fellow right prayer, our right worshipper and our left worshipper are not intact, we have to ask ourselves, is this truly a community? Is this truly a community that we need to consider it? There's a saying by the Prophet ﷺ, قُلِ الْخَيْرَ أَوْ لَا يَصْدَقُ. Good. And if you're not saying good, keep it quiet. Right? We gotta watch our mouths, because we don't want to be those that, unfortunately, and it's a struggle for everyone. Everyone has their struggles, but Silaturahmi 2.0, to really check, are you okay? Is your family okay? How are the kids? Right? Because sometimes these things are very sensitive to others. But the Prophet, every time he would finish his prayer, he would turn around. Is everyone here? He would check. Am I missing someone here? Right? He would be considerate. In Indonesian, I think the translation is BUKA. To have the sense of BUKA. To really be aware of people's feelings. Right? Sense of mercy. And we have to embody that mercy to everyone as well. Right? And we're also advised to pray the nights. And inshallah, we are praying the nights. Right? We're in part of this hadith. And at the end, if we can combine all of this to spread the salams, to feed one another, to pray the night, the outcome is to be with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? And so my reflection, or my ending statement here, is to realize that it's not just about the performative actions that we do here, but the community is not feeling well, or they've felt a sense of oppression or transgression amongst themselves. It's upon us. We have to check ourselves. Because when someone is not feeling well, the Muslim Ummah is like a body. If a body is hurting in one part, the whole body hurts. And if we're doing our own business and so on and so forth, and someone else is going through issues, we really need to check ourselves. Right? As they all say, check yourselves before you wreck yourselves. Right? So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to check ourselves before we wreck ourselves. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow the mercy embodied within us to be embodied upon others, that we share in the sense of mercy. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala so that the reading and the recitation of the Quran becomes a sense of mercy for us and for the people around us. And that with the Quran that we have, it doesn't just become a ritualistic reading, but it becomes a gauge, it becomes the costume for us that we wear as the walking Quran. Right? And as the Prophet ﷺ walking Quran sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. We ask Allah to accept all our prayers.